My hands were shaking as I sat in my car outside Henderson Associates law firm, staring at the manila envelope on my passenger seat. Inside were divorce papers that would end my 3-year marriage to Carlos, and a USB drive that contained enough evidence to destroy his entire real estate empire. 3 days ago, I thought I was living a fairy tale. Now I knew it was all a nightmare. It started with a simple mistake, a voice note that was never meant for me. I was in my home office Tuesday morning, working on designs for the Grandview Hotel project, the biggest contract of my career. My phone buzzed with a WhatsApp message from Carlos. I smiled, thinking he was sending me one of his sweet good morning messages like he always did. But when I pressed play, I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. "Mom, I can't keep pretending much longer. This whole loving husband act is exhausting me." My heart stopped. Carlos was talking to his mother, not me. He must have sent it to the wrong contact. "Nina has no idea what's coming. In 2 weeks, I'll file for divorce right after I secure the Grandview contract under my name. She's been so stupid, giving me access to all her client information. I've already redirected 3 of her biggest clients to my real estate deals." I dropped my phone like it was on fire. This couldn't be real. Carlos loved me. We were planning to buy our dream house next month. We talked about having babies. This had to be some kind of joke. But his voice continued, cold and calculating in a way I'd never heard before. "Isabella is getting impatient too. She wants me to leave Nina now, but I told her to wait. Once I steal this hotel project and claim it as my own work, I'll have enough money and reputation to start fresh. Nina will be left with nothing, just like she deserves for trapping me into this marriage." Isabella. Who was Isabella? My mind raced through all the women Carlos worked with, all the clients he'd introduced me to. Then it hit me. Isabella Martinez, the wealthy investor who'd been funding several of Carlos's recent projects. The same woman who always seemed too friendly when she visited our house for business meetings. The voice note wasn't finished. "You were right, Mom. I should have never married beneath my status. Nina's just a small-town girl with big dreams. She actually thinks her little design business matters. It's pathetic how grateful she gets when I pretend to support her work. She has no idea I've been copying her designs and selling them to competitors." My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of believing I was loved, cherished, supported. All of it was fake. The best part is, she trusts me completely. She gave me access to all her business accounts, her client database, everything. She even put my name on the Grandview contract as a partner. When I divorce her, I'll claim she was just my assistant. Who's going to believe a nobody like her over someone from the Torres family? I heard his mother's laughter in the background, that same cold laugh I'd heard at family dinners when she thought I couldn't hear her cruel comments about my background, my clothes, my family. "Don't worry, Carlos. Once you're free from that girl, you can marry Isabella properly, someone who actually deserves our family name. And with the money from Nina's stolen work, we can finally save my business from bankruptcy." The voice note ended with Carlos promising to call his mother later to discuss more details. I sat there in my office chair, staring at my computer screen where the Grandview hotel designs were displayed. Months of work. My biggest breakthrough. The project that was supposed to launch my career to the next level. And Carlos was planning to steal it all. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Carlos. "Sorry, babe. Sent you something by mistake. Just ignore that voice note. Love you. Love me?" He didn't even know what love meant. I looked around my home office, the space Carlos had helped me set up when we got married. The desk where he'd bring me coffee every morning. The wall where he'd hung my first business license, telling me how proud he was of my success. All of it was lies. He was studying me, learning my weaknesses, planning my destruction. But Carlos made one crucial mistake. He underestimated me. I saved the voice note to 3 different devices and started making copies. Then I opened my laptop and began researching divorce lawyers, business attorneys, and fraud investigators. If Carlos wanted to play games, I would show him what a small-town girl with big dreams could really do when she stopped being grateful and started getting even. By the time he came home that evening with flowers and his fake smile, I was already 10 steps ahead of him. The war had begun, and he had no idea what was coming. 6 months earlier, I was the happiest woman alive. Or at least I thought I was. It was a crisp February morning when Carlos surprised me with breakfast in bed. Fresh strawberries, pancakes shaped like hearts, and coffee made exactly how I liked it. He sat on the edge of our bed, watching me eat with that smile that used to make my heart skip beats. "I have news," he said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "The Peterson project came through. We're getting the contract for their new office building." I nearly choked on my coffee. "We? Carlos, that's my client. I've been working on their designs for months." He laughed and kissed my forehead. "Of course, babe. I meant you're getting the contract. I just helped by introducing you to the right people. We're a team, remember?" That word, team. Carlos used it all the time. When he offered to handle my business emails while I focused on designing. When he suggested I add his name to my business bank account for easier access to funds. When he convinced me to store all my client files on our shared computer for backup purposes. I was so grateful to have a husband who supported my dreams. My own father had always told me that art and design were hobbies, not real careers. But Carlos encouraged me to chase my biggest projects, to dream bigger than I ever thought possible. "Speaking of teams," Carlos continued, pulling out his phone. "My mom wants to have dinner with us tonight. She has some ideas about the new house we're planning." My stomach dropped slightly. Maria Torres had never liked me, and she made no effort to hide it. During our wedding planning, she'd suggested Carlos reconsider marrying someone more suitable for the family business. At family gatherings, she'd introduce me as Carlos's little wife who plays with computers. But Carlos always defended me, at least I thought he did. "Don't worry about Mom," he said, noticing my expression. "She's just protective. Once she sees how successful your business is becoming, she'll come around." That evening, we sat in the Torres family dining room, a massive space with crystal chandeliers and oil paintings of Carlos's ancestors. Maria served her famous paella while discussing our house plans. "Carlos, darling, are you sure you want to buy in that neighborhood?" she asked, not even looking at me. "It's so middle class. What will people think?" "Mom, Nina loves that area. It's close to her office space, and the schools are great for when we have kids." Maria's fork clinked against her plate. "Kids? Carlos, you're barely established in your career, and Nina's little hobby business is hardly stable enough to support a family." "It's not a hobby, Mrs. Torres," I said quietly. "I have 12 regular clients now, and I just landed the Peterson contract." She waved her hand dismissively. "Contracts can disappear overnight, dear. Real estate is different. It's solid, generational wealth, like what Carlos is building." I noticed Carlos didn't correct her about my business being a hobby. He just squeezed my hand under the table and changed the subject. After dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom and overheard Carlos and his mother talking in the kitchen. "She's sweet, Carlos, but is she really what you want long-term?" Maria's voice was gentle, almost caring. "You could have anyone. Isabella Martinez has been asking about you again." "Mom, I'm married. I love Nina." "Love fades, mijo, but family legacy lasts forever. Just think about it." When I returned, they were both smiling like nothing had happened. The drive home was quiet. Carlos seemed lost in thought, and I wondered if his mother's words had affected him more than he let on. "Your mom really doesn't like me," I said finally. Carlos reached over and took my hand. "She just needs time. You know how traditional families can be, but I chose you, Nina. That's all that matters." I believed him. I wanted to believe him so badly. Over the next few months, Carlos became even more involved in my business. He started attending client meetings with me, saying his real estate experience could help with commercial projects. He offered to handle my contracts and invoicing, claiming it would free up more time for my creative work. "You're the artist," he'd say. "Let me handle the business side." I was so touched by his support. My friends were jealous of how involved Carlos was in my career. "You're so lucky," my best friend Anna would say. "Most husbands barely remember what their wives do for work." Carlos remembered everything. Every client name, every project deadline, every password to every account. He was so helpful, so interested, so supportive. I never questioned why he needed access to everything. I never wondered why he insisted on being present for every important business call. I never noticed how he'd steer conversations with my clients toward his real estate services. I was blind to it all because I thought we were building something beautiful together. I thought his success was my success, and my success was his. I had no idea he was systematically learning everything about my business so he could destroy it. The day after I heard that voice note, I couldn't stop thinking about Maria's role in all of this. So I did something I'd never done before. I went through Carlos's phone while he was in the shower. What I found made me sick to my stomach. There were hundreds of text messages between Carlos and his mother going back almost 2 years. Messages that painted a picture of a conspiracy I never saw coming. The earliest message I found was from March of last year. "Maria, Carlos, I'm worried about you. Nina is holding you back from your potential. You could be running the family business by now." Carlos, "Mom, she's my wife. I can't just abandon her." Maria, "I'm not saying abandon her. I'm saying think about your future. What happens when you want to expand into luxury real estate? Nina's background will embarrass you in front of high-end clients." Carlos, "Maybe you're right, but what am I supposed to do?" Maria, "Just keep your options open, mijo, and maybe don't get too attached." I scrolled down, my hands trembling as the messages got worse. Maria, "I met Isabella Martinez today at the country club. She's beautiful, successful, and from a good family. She asked about you." Carlos, "Mom, I'm married." Maria, "For now. But marriages end, Carlos, especially when people realize they married the wrong person." The messages continued for weeks, with Maria slowly poisoning Carlos's mind against me. She'd send him articles about successful real estate moguls and their appropriate wives. She'd share gossip about other family members who'd married down and regretted it. But the worst part was how she documented everything about me like I was some kind of case study. Maria, "Nina wore that cheap dress to the Hernandez wedding again. People notice these things, Carlos." Maria, "I heard Nina's parents still live in that tiny apartment. What will people think when they meet your in-laws?" Maria, "Nina mispronounced hors d'oeuvres at dinner last night. Isabella would never make such mistakes. Every small moment, every tiny flaw, every sign that I didn't come from money, Maria cataloged it all and used it as ammunition against me. Then I found the messages from 6 months ago, right around the time Carlos started getting more involved in my business." Maria, "If you're going to leave Nina eventually, you should protect yourself financially. Make sure you get something out of this marriage." Carlos, "What do you mean?" Maria, "Her little design business is actually doing well. Maybe you could learn from it. Take some of her clients when you leave. Think of it as compensation for the years you've wasted." Carlos, "That seems wrong, Mom." Maria, "What's wrong is staying in a marriage that's beneath you. If Nina really loved you, she'd want you to succeed, even if it meant letting you go." I had to put the phone down. The manipulation was so calculated, so cruel. Maria had spent months convincing Carlos that I was the problem, that I was holding him back, that he deserved better. But it got worse. Maria, I introduced Carlos to Isabella at the charity gala last night. They talked for an hour. She's perfect for him. Educated, wealthy, sophisticated. Everything Nina isn't. Carlos, "She seems nice, but I'm still married." Maria, "Marriages are just paperwork, mijo. What matters is finding your true partner in life. someone who can elevate you instead of dragging you down. The messages showed how Maria arranged accidental meetings between Carlos and Isabella, coffee dates that were supposedly business meetings, dinner parties where Isabella just happened to be seated next to Carlos, gallery openings where Maria made sure they spent time alone together. And slowly, Carlos's messages started changing. Carlos, Isabella really understands the real estate business. She has great insights. Carlos, you're right, Mom. Nina doesn't really fit into our world. Carlos, maybe I did settle too quickly. I was young and thought love was enough. Then came the messages about the affair. Maria, Isabella is going to the coast for the weekend. She invited you to join her. I think you should go. Carlos, what about Nina? Maria, tell her it's a business trip, which it is, in a way. You're investing in your future. Carlos, I feel guilty. Maria, guilt is just fear of change, mijo. You deserve happiness, real happiness, not this pretend life you're living. The final messages were from just 2 weeks ago, planning my destruction in detail. Maria, once you get the Grandview contract under your name, you'll have enough credibility to start over. Isabella's father wants to invest in your new company. Carlos, what about Nina's other clients? Maria, take them with you. She gave you access to everything. It's not stealing if you're just protecting what you helped build. Carlos, and the divorce? Maria, quick and clean. We'll claim irreconcilable differences. With your new success and Isabella's family backing you, Nina won't be able to fight it. I sat on our bathroom floor, reading message after message of my mother-in-law systematically destroying my marriage. She'd turned my husband against me so slowly, so carefully, that he probably didn't even realize he was being manipulated. But I realized something else as I read those messages. Maria had made one crucial mistake. She documented everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every piece of evidence I needed was right there in black and white. Maria thought she was so clever, but she just handed me the blueprint for my revenge. I spent the next day playing detective in my own life, and what I discovered made me realize that Carlos and Maria weren't just planning to hurt me. They'd already been destroying me for months. It started when I decided to check my business email account. Carlos had been helping me manage it for the past 6 months, and I'd been grateful for his assistance. But now I looked at it with new eyes. I found emails I'd never seen before, messages from my biggest clients, the Peterson Group, Riverside Development, and Coastal Properties, all expressing concerns about my reliability and communication issues. According to these emails, I'd apparently missed several important meetings and deadlines. But I knew I'd never missed any meetings. I kept detailed calendars and always confirmed appointments twice. Then I found the replies. Emails sent from my account, but not by me. Messages apologizing for my personal issues and suggesting that clients might be more comfortable working with my business partner, Carlos Torres, who has extensive experience in commercial real estate. Carlos had been sabotaging my relationships with my own clients. I dug deeper and found forwarded emails, my private client communications sent to Carlos's personal account, design concepts I'd created, pricing strategies I'd developed, even personal information about my clients' preferences and budgets. Carlos had been stealing my work and using it to build his own relationships with my clients. But the worst discovery was in my sent folder. Emails I'd never written, sent to my competitors, sharing my design concepts and client lists. Carlos had been selling my work to other companies while simultaneously stealing my clients for himself. My hands were shaking as I called the Peterson Group directly. Hi, this is Nina Torres from Torres Design Studio. I wanted to follow up on our project timeline. There was an awkward pause. Oh, Nina, we thought you knew. We've decided to work with your husband's company instead. He explained that you were having some personal difficulties and suggested we'd get better service through his real estate division. Personal difficulties? Yes. He mentioned you were dealing with some family issues and might not be able to give our project the attention it deserves. He's been so professional about the whole situation. We really appreciate him looking out for our interests. I hung up and immediately called Riverside Development. Same story. Carlos had told them I was overwhelmed and struggling to keep up with demand. He'd positioned himself as the solution to problems he'd created. Then I called Coastal Properties, my oldest and most loyal client. The receptionist's voice was cold when she heard my name. Ms. Torres, I'm surprised to hear from you. After what happened with the Martinez project, we didn't think you'd want to work with us anymore. What Martinez project? The designs you sold to our competitor last month. Isabella Martinez's company got the exact same concepts we'd paid you to develop exclusively for us. We had to completely start over. Isabella Martinez. Of course. There must be some mistake, I said weakly. No mistake. We have the emails where you offered to sell our designs to the highest bidder. Very unprofessional, Ms. Torres. We've already filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. I hung up and ran to my computer. I searched through every folder, every backup drive, every cloud storage account. My designs for Coastal Properties were gone. But I found them on Carlos's laptop, modified slightly and saved under Isabella's company name. Carlos hadn't just been stealing my clients. He'd been framing me for theft and selling my work to his girlfriend. I needed to see Isabella for myself. I drove to her office building, a gleaming tower downtown that screamed money and power. The lobby was all marble and gold, with Isabella's company logo prominently displayed. Martinez Luxury Developments. I waited in the coffee shop across the street until I saw her. Isabella Martinez was everything I wasn't. Tall, elegant, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She walked with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. But what made my blood boil was seeing Carlos's car in the parking garage. It was 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. He'd told me he was showing houses to clients all afternoon. I followed them to an expensive restaurant downtown. They sat at a corner table holding hands and laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Isabella was wearing a diamond bracelet I'd never seen before, and Carlos was looking at her the way he used to look at me. I took photos from across the restaurant, documenting their obvious intimacy, but what I overheard when I moved to a closer table made everything clear. The Grandview contract is almost finalized, Carlos was saying. Once Nina signs the final papers next week, I'll have everything I need to start our company. And she has no idea? Isabella asked, stroking his hand. None. She actually thinks I'm being supportive. She's so trusting, it's almost sad. What about the other designs? The ones from her previous clients? Already transferred to your company. By the time anyone realizes what happened, we'll be married and living in the Bahamas. I can't wait to be Mrs. Torres, Isabella purred, though I think we should change the company name, something more sophisticated than what Nina came up with. They were planning to steal my life's work, destroy my reputation, and build their future on the ruins of everything I'd created. But as I sat there listening to them plan my destruction, I realized something important. They were so confident, so careless, that they'd never considered the possibility that I might fight back. That was going to be their biggest mistake. That night, I sat in my home office staring at everything Carlos and I had built together, knowing it was all built on lies. But instead of crying or confronting him, I did something that surprised even me. I started planning. I opened my laptop and created a new folder labeled Project Freedom. Inside, I began documenting every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Screenshots of the text messages between Carlos and Maria, photos of him with Isabella, copies of the emails he'd sent from my account, bank records showing suspicious transfers. But I needed help, and there was only one person I could trust completely. Antonio Rivera had been my business partner for 2 years, though Carlos never knew the full extent of our partnership. When I'd started my design business, Antonio had provided the initial funding in exchange for a 30% stake. He was a successful contractor who specialized in luxury renovations, and he'd always believed in my talent. More importantly, Antonio had never liked Carlos. There's something fake about him, Antonio had told me once. He smiles too much and asks too many questions about your business. I'd defended Carlos back then, but now I realized Antonio had seen what I'd been blind to. I called Antonio at 11 p.m., knowing he'd still be awake. He was a night owl who often worked on project plans until dawn. Nina, what's wrong? You sound upset. Antonio, I need to see you. Tonight. It's about the business. I'll be right over. 20 minutes later, Antonio sat in my kitchen while I played Carlos's voice note. I watched his face change from confusion to anger to something that looked like murder. That bastard, he whispered. Nina, I'm so sorry. I should have pushed harder when I had concerns. You tried to warn me. I just wasn't ready to listen. Antonio leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. What do you want to do? Because if you want to destroy him, I'm in. Completely. For the next 3 hours, we planned my escape and Carlos's downfall with military precision. First, we needed to secure my business assets. Antonio revealed something I didn't know. He'd been quietly protecting my interests for months. Every major design I'd created was automatically backed up to his secure servers. Every client contract had a clause that protected my intellectual property, even if someone else tried to claim credit. I've been worried about Carlos's involvement in your business, Antonio admitted. So I've been creating safeguards without telling you. I have copies of everything, your original designs, client communications, financial records, everything. Why didn't you tell me? Because you loved him, and Antonio paused, looking uncomfortable. I didn't want you to think I was jealous. Were you? Jealous? Antonio met my eyes. Yes, I've been in love with you since the day we met. But you were married and happy, so I kept my distance. I just wanted to protect you, even if you never knew it. My heart did something complicated, but I pushed those feelings aside. There would be time to process Antonio's confession later. Right now, I needed to focus on survival. We worked until dawn, creating a comprehensive plan. Step 1. Secure my business. Antonio would help me transfer all my legitimate assets to a new company we'd create together. Since he was already my business partner, this was completely legal. Step 2. Document everything. We'd gather more evidence of Carlos's fraud, his affair, and his plans to steal my work. Step 3. Protect my clients. We'd quietly reach out to my remaining loyal clients and explain the situation, offering them protection from Carlos's schemes. Step 4. Legal preparation. Antonio knew an excellent lawyer who specialized in business fraud and intellectual property theft. Step 5. The nuclear option. We'd expose everything at once, to Carlos's real estate board, to Isabella's husband, to the media if necessary. There's something else, Antonio said as the sun started rising. Isabella's husband, Roberto Martinez, is one of my biggest clients. He hired me to renovate their beach house last year. He has no idea about the affair. What's he like? Powerful, wealthy, and absolutely devoted to Isabella. He thinks she's perfect. This will destroy him, but he deserves to know the truth. And he's Carlos's biggest investor? Exactly. Roberto has funded at least 6 of Carlos's recent projects. If he pulls out, Carlos's entire real estate operation will collapse. As Antonio left that morning, he squeezed my hand. Nina, I want you to know, whatever happens between us personally, I'm going to help you through this. You don't deserve what they've done to you. After he left, I showered and got dressed for another day of pretending everything was normal. Carlos came downstairs whistling, kissed my cheek, and asked about my day like he always did. Just working on the Grandview project, I said sweetly. I should have the final designs ready for you to review next week. Perfect, he said, not noticing the emphasis I'd put on for you to review. As Carlos left for his client meetings, probably another date with Isabella, I opened my laptop and began phase 1 of Project Freedom. By the time Carlos came home that evening, I'd already transferred half my business assets to the new company Antonio and I had created. I'd also scheduled meetings with 3 different lawyers for the following week. Carlos had spent 3 years planning my destruction. I was going to destroy his entire world in 3 weeks. 2 weeks later, everything was in place. Carlos had no idea that while he was planning to steal my life's work, I was systematically dismantling his entire world. It started on a Monday morning. Carlos left for work early, telling me he had important meetings all day. I knew he was actually spending the day with Isabella, finalizing their plans to take over my Grandview Hotel contract. What Carlos didn't know was that I'd already met with the Grandview executives 3 days earlier. "Mrs. Torres," the hotel manager had said, "we're confused about some communications we've received from your husband's company. He's claiming to be the lead designer on our project?" I'd shown them the original contracts, my design sketches with timestamps, and the evidence of Carlos's fraud. Their lawyers were very interested in the documentation Antonio and I had prepared. "We'll be terminating any agreements with Mr. Torres immediately," they assured me, "and we'll be recommending criminal charges for attempted fraud." While Carlos was with Isabella that Monday, I was at the State Real Estate Board, filing a formal complaint with a thick folder of evidence. The investigator's eyes widened as I showed him the emails Carlos had sent from my account, the stolen client lists, and the forged documents. "This is serious fraud, Mrs. Torres. We'll be opening an immediate investigation and suspending his license pending review." Tuesday was Roberto Martinez's turn. Antonio had arranged a meeting under the pretense of discussing a new renovation project. Roberto arrived at Antonio's office expecting to talk about marble countertops. Instead, I was waiting with photos of his wife and my husband together, bank records showing Carlos's fraudulent activities, and copies of the text messages planning their future together. Roberto's face went through several emotions: confusion, disbelief, rage, and finally cold calculation. "How long?" he asked quietly. "At least 8 months that I can prove," I said. "Probably longer." Roberto studied the photos of Carlos and Isabella holding hands, kissing, planning their life together with stolen money. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady. "What do you need from me?" "Nothing. I just thought you deserved to know the truth. And Carlos's business? The projects I've funded?" Antonio leaned forward. "All built on fraud. He's been stealing designs, manipulating clients, and using your money to fund his affair with your wife." Roberto stood up slowly. "Thank you for telling me, both of you." He paused at the door. "Carlos Torres will never work in this city again. I'll make sure of that." Wednesday brought the media attention. I'd contacted a local business reporter who specialized in fraud cases. She was very interested in the story of a successful real estate agent who'd systematically stolen his wife's business while planning to abandon her for his investor's wife. "This has everything," she said excitedly. "Fraud, adultery, family drama, stolen intellectual property. When can we publish?" "Friday," I told her. "Give me until Friday." Thursday was Maria's turn. I'd discovered that Carlos had been using money from my business accounts to prop up his mother's failing restaurant. Money that was supposed to be for our house down payment had been secretly transferred to cover Maria's debts. I walked into her restaurant during the lunch rush and handed her a folder. "What's this?" she asked, her usual cold demeanor faltering slightly. "Copies of bank records showing how your son has been stealing from my business to save yours. Also, a lawsuit for conspiracy to commit fraud. You'll be hearing from my lawyers." Maria's face went white as she flipped through the documents. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can. Carlos kept very detailed records. And those text messages between you two, they're all evidence now." I left her standing there, knowing that by tomorrow her restaurant would be closed and her assets frozen. Friday morning, Carlos woke up to find his real estate license suspended, his biggest investor pulling all funding, his affair exposed in the local business journal, and divorce papers on the kitchen table. But I wasn't there to see his reaction. I was already at my new office with Antonio, signing contracts with 3 major clients who'd left Carlos's company after learning the truth about his fraudulent practices. My phone buzzed with frantic calls from Carlos, but I didn't answer. The war was almost over, and I'd won every single battle. 6 months later, I stood in the penthouse office of Torres Design Development, the company Antonio and I had built from the ashes of my old life. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the Grandview Hotel rising against the skyline, built from my designs and my vision. Carlos had lost everything, just like he'd planned for me. His real estate license was permanently revoked after the state board's investigation revealed years of fraudulent practices. The Business Journal article had been picked up by national media, making him unemployable in real estate anywhere in the country. Roberto Martinez had not only pulled his investments, but had also sued Carlos for fraud, winning a judgment that left him bankrupt. Isabella had divorced Roberto and tried to start fresh with Carlos, but without money or prospects, their relationship crumbled within weeks. Last I heard, she'd moved back in with her parents, and Carlos was working at a car dealership in a town 3 hours away. Maria's restaurant had closed permanently. The lawsuit I'd filed against her for conspiracy had resulted in a settlement that wiped out her savings. She'd moved to a small apartment across town and refused to speak to Carlos, blaming him for destroying the family reputation. But the sweetest revenge was my success. Torres Design Development had become the most sought-after firm in the city. The Grandview Hotel project had won 3 architectural awards and led to contracts with major developers across the state. Antonio and I had hired 12 employees and were planning to expand to other cities. More importantly, I'd found real love. Antonio had been patient, never pushing, always supporting. Our relationship had grown naturally from partnership to friendship to something deeper. He loved my ambition, celebrated my successes, and never once tried to diminish my achievements or steal credit for my work. "Mrs. Torres?" My assistant knocked on my office door. "There's someone here to see you. He says it's personal." I looked up from the contracts I was reviewing to see Carlos standing in my doorway. He looked terrible, thin, unshaven, wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit properly. The confident, charming man I'd married was gone, replaced by someone who looked broken and desperate. "Nina, please. Just 5 minutes." I nodded to my assistant, who reluctantly left us alone. Carlos sat down across from my desk, looking around at the success I'd built without him. "This is incredible. You did all this?" "Antonio and I built this together, with honesty, hard work, and mutual respect. I heard you two got engaged. Congratulations." I touched the simple but elegant ring on my finger. "Thank you." Carlos was quiet for a long moment. "I came to apologize and to ask for your forgiveness." "Apologize for what exactly? The affair? The theft? The 3 years of lies? Or the plan to destroy my life and steal my work?" He flinched. "All of it. I was wrong, Nina. I was stupid and greedy, and I let my mother poison my mind against you. Your mother didn't make you steal from me, Carlos. She didn't make you cheat. She didn't make you plan to leave me with nothing while you built a new life with my work. I know. I take full responsibility. I miss you. I miss us." I leaned back in my chair, studying the man who'd once been my whole world. "There was no us, Carlos. There was me, loving you completely, and you, pretending to love me while planning my destruction. That's not a marriage. That's a con game. I did love you. I still do. No, you don't. You loved what I could give you. My trust, my work, my connections, my money. You never loved me." Carlos's shoulders sagged. "What can I do? How can I make this right?" "You can't. Some things can't be fixed, Carlos. Some betrayals are too deep." He sat there for another minute, looking lost. Finally, he stood up. "I'm glad you're happy. You deserve it." After he left, I sat in my office thinking about the journey that had brought me here. The voice note that shattered my world had actually saved my life. It had shown me who Carlos really was before he could completely destroy me. My phone buzzed with a text from Antonio. "Dinner tonight? I have news about the Miami project." I smiled and typed back. "Can't wait to hear it." I'd learned that real love doesn't steal from you. It builds with you. Real partnership doesn't diminish you. It elevates you both. Carlos had tried to destroy me, but instead he'd set me free to become everything I was meant to be. And that was the best revenge of all.